That trouble that's brewing in the Atlantic. The tropical system Florence on the move right now, far from land, but there's already a warning about life-threatening surf and rip currents here along the East Coast. Ginger, of course, tracking the storm. And Ginger, there's potential this could become a major hurricane.
Yes, Florence at one point was already a major hurricane, then dropped down and looks kind of ugly on the satellite. It's actually run into a significant amount of wind shear that has taken it down, but that's not for long because it's about to enter the atmosphere of very favorable conditions for hurricane development and intensification. Look at that. A Category 3 by Wednesday is where the Hurricane Center has it, and that is approaching the United States. If it will hit, if it makes landfall, depends greatly on that high pressure system, the size of it, and how much it's going to squeeze or elongate. But look at this. A lot of the spaghetti computer models that people love to look at, the American model takes it still out to sea. Either way, I have to warn you guys, this weekend, in the immediate future, we have high surf up to 8 feet and dangerous rip currents to deal with. Cecilia?
One after another, they arrive at the edge of the hole. Everyone wants a photo.
And I've got friends that live out west that were sending me pictures of this, that live out in Alberta.
Well, it's amazing. It's just amazing. I just can't understand, like Mother Nature.
What started the size of a gopher hole has turned into this. It now measures 32 by 38 meters, swallowing picnic tables and full-grown trees.
Somebody told me this happened. I said, no, that's a gross exaggeration, but it wasn't an exaggeration. It just was gone. And just like it was flushed down the toilet. And it was about 30 feet high.
Sinkholes are not uncommon in the area, but the chance to watch as one develops is.
Gypsum is a soft mineral. It can dissolve over a long period of time with groundwater flow and surface runoff as well.
Geologists are also monitoring activity around the hole. New cracks are popping up every day. They're getting deeper and wider. The colors indicating on which day the crack was first noticed. This one hasn't been color-coded yet. It just popped up today.
And these things are unpredictable, and until we know more of what's going on beneath our feet, we can't estimate what the final size could be.
The Oxford sinkhole is getting so much attention, it even has its own Twitter handle. But there have also been multiple fender benders caused by drivers watching the sinkhole instead of the road. And the area's emergency management coordinator says if it keeps growing, they might have to close the highway, shut off power, and evacuate homes.
The real emotional story here is the Oxford Lions Club. The blood, sweat, and tears and the finances that they put into not only this property, but into this community is being lost. There's heartbreak here.
Heartbreak and curiosity from those who just can't help but watch to see what might happen next. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Oxford, Nova Scotia.
Well, it's been a relentless fire season in California, to say the least. More than 45 miles of an interstate there now closed through the weekend as firefighters battle another one. It's burning out of control.
Walls of flames jumping the roadway, threatening drivers. It is, as Adrian said, out of control. ABC's Will Carr right there in Redding, California with more. Will, good morning to you.
Good morning, Adrian and Dan. The Delta fires continuing to inflict damage along I-5. There are still mandatory evacuations after flames have burned homes like this down to the ground. You can see everything here reduced to rubble as these flames continue to burn.
Overnight, the Delta fire scorching more tinderbox terrain. The blaze burning more than 31,000 bone-dry acres. Firefighters on the front lines exhausted, but attacking the fire from the air, working round the clock.
For these crews, this is a dangerous game of whack-a-mole. When flames pop up, they try to jump on top of them. They've actually started this backfire, creating these flames, trying to cut off the fire's path. That path charring both sides of a major thoroughfare stretching across Northern California. Fierce flames shutting down 47 miles of I-5 just hours after the fire started. A wall of flames trapping cars and trucks.
Look at that side just caught on fire. We cannot stay right here.
Some forced to flee on foot.
We gotta walk.
The skeletons of their vehicles left scattered on the side of the road. This team of local firefighters, some of the first on the scene, amazingly stumbling across the Delta fire while on their way home from 19 consecutive days of battling 2 other California blazes.
We actually came across the Delta fire right as it was starting, so we pulled off the side of the road and loaded up and tried to fight the fire.
Their quick thinking reportedly saving about a dozen homes. But the fire quickly outpacing those first responders. By Friday morning, smoke from the inferno descending on nearby Redding, California, closing schools and businesses.
Never seen anything like it in Redding in 40 years.
So far this year, wildfires have destroyed 1.2 million acres in California. The cost of that destruction now nearing $900 million. And with the rest of September and October left, this will end up being the worst wildfire season ever in California history. Whit.
All right, Will Carr. I mean, the image is just extraordinary.
And this is Santa Ana wind season. Like, it's going to
Absolutely.
go all the way through November.
Yep. And the toll it takes on the people who live there and on those firefighters is incredible.
Amazing. We appreciate Will and our crew out there doing a great job.
Turning our focus to Japan now. Yesterday, Hokkaido was hit hard by an earthquake. Recovery operations are ongoing today, but the number of casualties continues to rise. Hong Yu has the latest from the country's northern island.
The number of deaths caused by the powerful 6.7 magnitude earthquake that hit Hokkaido on Thursday is now at least 18. 24 people are still missing and over 300 are injured. The Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, told an emergency meeting early on Friday that more than 20,000 rescue workers had worked through the night to search for survivors in the area around Asmachu village in Hokkaido. Power has been restored to 80% of the households in Hokkaido after the earthquake knocked out electricity to the whole island. But it could take at least a week to fully restore power to all households. Even the local airport, New Chitose Airport, has been closed. Some parts of the ceiling and the water pipes were damaged, and with no electricity, all morning flights were cancelled. More than 100 aftershocks have been detected so far, and with rain in the forecast, Japan's Meteorological Administration advised people to stay alert for possible further damage in areas where the ground has been weakened. Meanwhile, the South Korean Ministry of Foreign Affairs is taking care of South Korean nationals stranded in the area by providing food and shelter. And starting from today, the ministry will try to get them home safely. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
These are sounds of celebration in India. History has been made. 5 Supreme Court judges unanimously ruled gay sex is no longer a crime. The verdict was read September 6 in Delhi. The ruling overturned a colonial-era law classifying same-sex intercourse by adults as a crime, punishable by life in prison. CNN reports the law was rarely enforced, but created a culture of fear in a country where homosexuality was considered taboo. In July, the judges heard arguments from lawyers representing more than a dozen gay and lesbian Indians. One judge commented, criminalizing carnal intercourse is irrational, arbitrary, and manifestly unconstitutional. Despite the verdict, there's still opposition among some religious and conservative groups. However, the Congress Party, India's main opposition party, posted a message saying it joins the people of India in their victory over prejudice and hoped this is the beginning of a more equal and inclusive society. For United News International, I'm Juliette Vara.
New York Attorney General Barbara Underwood has subpoenaed the state's 8 Roman Catholic dioceses as part of the ongoing civil investigation into how the Catholic Church handled and potentially hid allegations of sexual abuse by priests. At the same time, the New Jersey Attorney General announced he's setting up a task force to look into cases of clergy sex abuse of children and cover up attempts by the church in his state. That task force, led by an experienced sex crimes prosecutor, will then hand over evidence to a grand jury. The church as a whole is still coming to grips with the recent resignation of Cardinal Theodore McCarrick, former Archbishop of Newark and Washington, D.C., after abuse allegations against him were substantiated. The announcements in New York and New Jersey come 3 weeks after a grand jury report in Pennsylvania accused the Catholic Church of hiding the abuse of about 1,000 children by more than 300 priests over 7 decades. The report also found church leadership worked to cover up the abuse cases. At that time, we spoke with Timothy Cardinal Dolan, Archbishop of the Diocese of New York, who called this another blow to the integrity of the church.
I really worry about a loss of credibility, a loss of trust. There's no use denying it. We can't sugarcoat this. This is disastrous. This is extraordinarily painful. It is embarrassing. It is humiliating. It is nauseating. But we believe in a God who can bring good out of evil.
The subpoenas will request all documents relating to sex abuse allegations, including victim payoffs and findings from internal church investigations. A spokesperson for the Archdiocese of New York today told CBS 2 it did receive the subpoena, is not surprised by the civil investigation, and is eager to work with the Attorney General. Live in the newsroom, Jessica Layton, CBS 2 News.
The Brazilian presidential elections take another dramatic twist. Far-right candidate Jair Bolsonaro was stabbed in the stomach Thursday, September 6th, during a crowded campaign event. The suspect, Adelio Bispo de Oliveira, was arrested and reportedly said he was carrying out a mission from God. Meanwhile, 63-year-old Bolsonaro posted updates from his hospital bed after surgery, calling the pain he endured unbearable. Doctors say he sustained grave wounds to his intestines, and his son says it's a miracle he's alive. Some are calling this campaign the most unpredictable election since the country's return to democracy 3 decades ago. Bolsonaro's opponent, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, has been in jail since April, accused of money laundering and corruption. He's reportedly still campaigning. Bolsonaro is known by some as the Brazilian Trump, and he uses what many consider to be racist and homophobic rhetoric. However, he's performed well in the polls and leads the polls for the first round of elections next month. For United News International, I'm Juliette Vaughn.
American News speaks with Alex Jones about conservatives being censored on social media. Here's One America's Jack Posobiec with that interview from Capitol Hill.
What is the goal today? What is the goal that you want to get across? What's the bottom line?
My main goal is to warn the American people that our cherished First Amendment is literally being stolen, is being robbed from us right now. And they've had now 11 hearings where they demonize myself, the free press, the Drudge Report, you name it, and conservative talk radio, calling for us to be deplatformed. And now we have Senators Warner and Wyden and Murphy saying, don't just get rid of Alex Jones, which happened a month ago, criminal deplatforming, but they say, get rid of thousands of other sites. And so they brought in the Southern Poverty Law Center and Media Matters with big tech, admittedly, in people's accounts, watching them like the East German Stasi deleting people. So I'm here to raise the alarm and point out that they've had all these hearings and I've never been called. And so I've been calling and writing and telling my listeners to call them, and I've called members of Congress. I've gotten my contacts. I've had lobbyists try to call them and say, listen, you need to have me in the committee hearing here, because in some of these hearings, they literally have people from the CIA and others up in defense committees in the House, and these are main committees, going, well, Jones is a Russian operative. I mean, it's completely criminal, but it's members of the government doing it inside of a committee hearing, so they're, I guess, legislatively protected, my lawyers tell me, to then lie about me. So it's so incredibly dangerous. And we need First Amendment enforcement that these big tech giants have operated as monopolies, they've operated as public commons, and they've argued that it's not their job to control your third-party content. Unless it's illegal, then they call the police. But they're going back on that now and discriminating against conservatives, nationalists, and patriots. So this is a major civil rights violation. It's a major violation of people's privacy. It's putting people into political groups and naming them, which group they're in, and tracking them and treating them differently. It's very, very un-American. So we simply need the enforcement of the First Amendment brought back in under the power of the executive in an emergency action because Congress is asleep at the switch.
After being moved from one detention center to another,
These migrants say their life hasn't changed much. They're from Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Somalia. Like most of them, 23 years old Mariam and her baby girl Rihana were rescued off the coast of Libya months ago. She once dreamt of reaching Italy, but ended up with about 2,000 others in detention close to the fighting in Tripoli.
We stayed 5 months in the previous detention center before the shelling came close to us. Then supervisors there opened the gates and ordered us to leave.
After being ordered out, many were soon rounded up and sent to a new detention center away from the fighting. Supervisors say they have saved migrants' lives, but in this new detention center, they can't afford to take care of them any longer.
Our detention center can't receive any more migrants. In fact, we can't feed all these people. Expenses were covered by donors the last couple of days.
These African migrants are not the only people who fled the areas affected by the fighting. Many Libyan families had to leave their homes too. Others remain stuck there, and no one can reach them except some aid agencies.
Dr. Malik Mursit and his team of paramedics carry aid in their ambulances. They hope it will reach trapped civilians.
We've also set up field hospitals near the clashes areas. We treat casualties there, and afterwards we take them to our hospitals.
The recent fighting for control of Tripoli started in the southern outskirts 10 days ago. Armed groups from Tripoli, which are backed by the internationally recognized government, are battling the 7th Infantry Brigade from the city of Tarhuna, which is allied to fighters from Misrata. Stray rockets fired in populated areas have contributed to the killing of dozens of people and destroyed homes. Abdul Mun'im Ali says he's grateful to have escaped fighting a few days ago, along with his wife and 2 daughters. They live in a classroom in this school, furnished by a relief organization.
The shelling was heavy and close to our house the whole night. We couldn't stay there any longer, so in the morning we left.
Back in the detention center, Mariam and her friends are also fortunate to have escaped being killed. But many other migrants who also fled the fighting and weren't rounded up remain unaccounted for. Mahmoud Abdul Wahid, Al Jazeera, Tripoli.
In Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh, it's not just a humanitarian crisis that's unfolding. An environmental one is too. That's why today, in the Kutupalong refugee camp, BRAC, a local NGO, is overseeing the planting of trees. Abdus Salam tells me this initiative is one part of a larger effort to help this landscape recover, and recounts how things got so dire.
After the Rohingya came to this country, the forest here really got destroyed. If we look at a picture of this area from before August 2017, we would see lots of green and forest. After that, when they started to build houses and roads, that destroyed most of the forest. Not only that, they are cutting down most of the wood to use for cooking.
Just up the road, Rohingya refugee Abdul Mannan emerges from the forest carrying the wood he's just gathered. He explains this is imperative to him and his family.
We don't have stoves. It's very hard for us to cook. We have to collect this wood so we can eat.
In nearby Chakmarkul refugee camp, another effort aimed at preventing more deforestation. Here, the United Nations Refugee Agency is training Rohingya refugees how to use the energy-efficient stoves they will be given. This pilot project is also distributing liquid petroleum gas, or LPG as it's called, to thousands of families. Mikhail Idon tells me the equivalent of 4 football fields of forest is being cut down daily because refugees need cooking fuel.
Refugees are using firewood on inefficient mud stoves, so it produces a lot of smoke, which is quite unhealthy for the refugees. LPG will burn in a clean way. And also it addresses protection issues.
In the past year, over 700,000 Rohingya refugees fled Myanmar's Rakhine state after a crackdown that was launched against them by the military. They have settled in neighboring Bangladesh, where the border town of Cox's Bazar has become home to the largest refugee settlement in the world. The influx has drastically impacted the landscape for humans as well as animals. The location of this camp happens to lie on a migratory route for endangered Asian elephants that runs between Bangladesh and Myanmar. Now, watchtowers like the one you see behind me, they've been built in key locations here in order to alert refugees if elephants enter the area. For now, at least, and despite everyone's best efforts, only one thing is certain: that the challenges here, both humanitarian and environmental, will, for the foreseeable future, continue. Mohammed Jamjoom, Al Jazeera, at the Kutupalong and Chakmarkul refugee camps in Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh.
Riots in the Iraqi city of Basra have left 12 people dead. Mass rallies against government corruption have been escalating over the past few days. On Thursday, the fourth day of the protests, people torched government buildings into the night. The riots erupted as the country's politicians struggle to form a new government. People are also protesting about a lack of basic services such as water and electricity. They say that the city's water supply is contaminated, with hundreds needing hospital treatment after drinking it, while power cuts are frequent. Security forces were dispersing the crowds with tear gas and, according to the city's health officials, with live rounds.
Somebody is trying to add fuel to the fire, to damage the relationship between the security forces and the people. I've ordered an investigation to find out what is going on and who is behind it.
Political commentator Adil Darwish says the government should be doing much more to address the concerns of protesters.
It's a deeply rooted corruption, which actually results in poor maintenance, and that's why there's lacking of basic services. They are unable to form a government in order at least to present someone responsible that the protesters actually can address their grievances to. And I don't see anybody coming with sane, workable idea. It's really tragic for a country like Iraq. I would actually make a public speech. I would call the security forces back and just say, let's all call for calm. I haven't heard this kind of speech from the Iraqi Prime Minister. So it's going to be deepen the division between the security forces who are supposed to protect the people and the people themselves.
It began here in Cairo's Rabah Square in August 2013. Protesters had staged a sit-in demonstrating against the military coup which deposed Egypt's first democratically elected president, Mohamed Morsi. Security forces moved in. Within hours, more than 900 protesters had been killed.
We have someone from killers, just the killers, just the killers.
And now, 5 years later, President Fattah al-Sisi's government has decided to kill 75 more.
Ismail Mohammed Rashwan and Yassin Mohammed Suleiman are sentenced to death.
They were part of a mass trial of 739 people, all arrested as they protested against Sisi's 2013 takeover. Most were detained during the Rabah massacre. The group was charged with murder, incitement to break the law, illegal gathering, and membership of an illegal group. That group is the Muslim Brotherhood, the now outlawed organisation of former President Morsi. Its spiritual leader, Mohammed Badieh, is one of 47 people who received a life sentence. Nearly 400 others will spend at least 10 years in prison.
We consider the trial to be a completely unfair one because of its nature. It's a mass trial. If you are prosecuting a large number of people like that, then it's impossible to prove individual criminal responsibility in that case.
One of the most well-known of the detainees is photojournalist Mahmoud Abu Zaid, known as Shokan. He was detained at the Rabah protest as he photographed security forces moving in on the crowd. He's expected to be released in the coming days after receiving a 5-year sentence, which he's already served in pre-trial detention.
Shaukan has nothing to do with anything. He's a journalist and he has no affiliations with anyone. He was holding a camera and taking pictures, not a weapon or anything like that.
He recorded a day that changed the lives of many Egyptians. 5 years ago, a recorded voice warned protesters to end their sit-in. Everyone wants to avoid any bloodshed, it said. But bloodshed was not avoided then and may not be now. The Egyptian courts have ordered the execution of 75 people. Lawyers of the accused say they'll appeal. Charlotte Ballas, Al Jazeera.
More than 100 U.S. troops began conducting live-fire exercises near a U.S. base in southern Syria following Russian threats on the area. Russia sent the U.S. 2 messages warning that it planned to attack terrorists in the same area as Al-Tanf, where U.S.-led coalition forces are garrisoned in the fight against ISIS. U.S. command has rejected Russia's plans to strike purported terrorists there, saying it doesn't want to fight, but will not hesitate to use force to defend U.S. or allied forces. On Friday, the U.S. began the live-fire exercises in the region. Unnamed U.S. defense officials told CNN the hope is that this will cause Russia to back off. Tensions are mounting in Syria. Russian and Syrian government forces have been bombing parts of northern Syria's Idlib province, one of the last rebel strongholds. U.S. officials warned an all-out assault on Idlib would have dire consequences.
Spiritual revival continues in northeastern Tennessee as the Greenville Awakening is now in its 21st week. Nearly 700 people have accepted Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior so far. The evangelist leading the revival services, D.R. Harrison, joins us now by Skype with more information. He's also accompanied by his wife, Laura. Welcome, guys.
Thank you for having us on.
First of all, yeah, welcome. First of all, the revival is in week 21. DR, tell us what's going on.
God just continues to move, Mark. Each week, the crowds continue to build. People continue to come from all over the country, as far away as India, where people were in the services this week that came all the way from over in India. There's people coming from as far west as Oregon, Arizona. And God just continues to draw people. Souls continue to be saved. And we're just amazed at what God's doing here in Greenville, Tennessee.
Laura, how did all this begin?
Well, it started in a church in Greystone. It started out what was going to be just a week revival. And the crowds began to grow and the excitement began to grow. And people were getting saved and lives were being changed. And so it has just continued from there and has expanded until people were standing room only in the church. And so it expanded into the tent.
DR, did you ever think it would last this long?
Never in a million years, Mark, would we have ever dreamed what God had planned. And that's why it's all God, because it's no man can take glory for what he's doing in this town. This past week, we were able to broadcast through BPN radio, and we were able to broadcast around the world, and there were 27 countries tuning in live each night in the services to what God's doing in Greenville.
Wow, so this is not just there in that region and in our country, this is going around the world. What does this revival say about the times that we are living in, Laura?
I believe that people are hungry. People are hungry for something that is real.
Yeah.
People are desperate for something that is real. There's so much hurt and so much tragedy all around us every day, and I believe everyone is searching for something that is real.
I believe it. Yeah.
Do you think, DR, that this shows that we're in the end times here and God is pouring out His Spirit?
I believe Joel chapter 2 is coming to life right before our very eyes. I believe God is pouring out His Spirit, and I believe that we are living in the last seconds of the last minutes of the last hours of the last days before Jesus returns.
And DR, what would you say would be the primary goal of the revival services?
The goal is simple. We want to reach as many people with the gospel as we possibly can, and we want people that are saved to be revived and to be awakened out of their sleep and to realize that we don't have a whole lot of time, and there's people dying and going to hell all around us, and we have the answer. We have the hope, and that hope is Jesus Christ. And what God did for my wife and I, God can do for them.
And Laura, I'm going to begin with you. Do you have a message for those at home who are going to see this interview and might not be able to attend?
Yes, don't give up. There is hope. There is hope, and the one hope that we do have is in Jesus Christ.
Amen.
And it doesn't matter what the world may throw you or what you are going through or what you may be addicted to, that there is one hope, and that is Jesus Christ.
Amen.
And quickly, DR, what would you say would be a message to those at home?
I would ditto that same thing, that Jesus is the answer. Whether it's drugs, alcohol, pornography, whatever you're facing in life, Jesus can wash it all away with His blood, and He can change your life like He did ours.
Amen. Well, tell us when and where the services are being held, DR.
The services are at 1005 Quaker Knob Road in Chuckey, Tennessee. If you can't attend in person, you can tune in live every night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on bpnradio.com or bpnradio.org. You can listen from your mobile device, laptop, tablet, wherever you are around the world. You can tune in and just pray for us and beg God to continue to move in this day and this hour.
And it is Monday through Friday. You guys take a break on the weekends, correct?
Yes, sir. Monday through Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time.
Okay. All right, Evangelist DR Harrison and his wife, Laura, thank you so much for your time and blessings to you both.